All right, guys, welcome everybody to another episode of BDCRX. Excited to share with you some great stories from our guests here today. Before we get to our guests, as always, Jason, how's everything going?
Everything's good, man. I think the car industry is in a good spot. It looks like starting off October hot and ready to go. So let's do this interview. We got Keith in the building. So this is going to be fun.
Absolutely. So, guys, all of you guys that are guests, we're excited to have Keith Sponburgh here. He is an internet director, BDC director over at Riverfront CDJR out in Illinois. He comes with so many years of a variety of experience that I think that we're going to be able to learn a lot from Keith today. Hey, Keith, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, man.
No problem. So I would, as Jason just made his little intro and said, the automotive industry is in a great place right now. I don't know if you agree with that statement. I don't know if I agree with that statement. I think let's talk through that a little bit right now. Keith, you've been in this business longer than Jason and I, probably longer than Jason and I combined inside of the dealership.
Hey, speak for yourself, buddy.
I don't know. Well, I haven't been in the car business for long, so like I don't really add much to the table there. But Keith, how do you feel like the strength and the health of the car dealership is today, and especially operating in a CDJR store today?
Well, Stellantis is struggling. There have been some issues, I guess, with the decisions that we're working our way through. But I feel that, the customers we are getting right now they're definitely buyers. Interest rates are down, so we're getting some improvement on that end. We're still dealing with people from, 3-4 years ago that paid too much for a car they didn't really want. So there's a lot of negative equity they're trying to deal with. Add to that inflation, so they're struggling a little bit with their credit. So the struggles are there, but the buyers are there too. So I think it could be worse. I would take this over what we had back in 2008, 2009. I think
so. Maybe he does have more experience. Okay,
fine. I was gonna say maybe he does.
He does.
So what happened in 2008, 2009? I'm unfamiliar with the answer. Obviously, I know the big picture global thing that happened through the financial problem, but I'm not sure how that affected the automotive industry. What's your experience on that?
Well, so you had the bankruptcies with General Motors and Chrysler before the FCA merger. So we had a tremendous inventory shortage. You coupled that, Obama had this great plan for the Cash for Clunkers program. Sorry, I forget the name. So you had a minimum trade-in value basically guaranteed by the government for $4,500 to get all these old cars off the lots. And almost every car that we had in our inventory qualified. So what we ended up with was our lot was so light on cars that any employees that owned a Chrysler product, we were parking out in the front to try to make it look like we weren't closed, because at the end of it, we got down to 8 new cars. And at the same time, these cars that people were trading in had to be destroyed if they collected the cash for clunkers. So we were at this bind where we're not refilling the used car inventory. We're selling all of our new car inventory. They're going through bankruptcy, so they're not delivering new cars out to us at the same rate that they were in the past. Yeah, it was tough.
It sounds tough. Now, Jason, I know you work with quite a few Stellantis stores. Right now, I know you and I have gone through conversations around how to deal with Nissan stores. I know we talked about that quite a bit about a year ago. But right now, what's your landscape on a CDJR store, on a Stellantis store?
Yeah, I think Stellantis, I think Keith kind of hit it on the head. If I was to get more bold with it, I would just say that because they went hybrid, because they went electric really fast on like a switch of a dime, is where I think the business was lost. I think they needed to get a new Durango, a new Charger, and they kind of need to switch up the inventory a little bit, new refreshers on the body, etc. Now, I will say that they do have the inside of the car has changed, but there hasn't been a huge revamp with the whole Stellantis. And I think that's where kind of people, it's like, I'm buying the same car again and again and again.
Like
kind of
iPhone,
in a way.
Right? It's just like the remake of the iPhone every year.
That's kind of what it is. And I'm not bad-mouthing it at all, because at the end of the day, I actually do think the motors are actually really good. I actually think Stellantis is reliable. I actually think they do good quality. So it's not that Stellantis is bad in any shape, way, or fashion. I just believe that they took a really quick hit, the Dart, the Charger being electric. Like, it's a muscle. Like, I owned a Hellcat. It's a muscle thing. It's a V8. It's rawr. It's about that, right? So I just think Stellantis kind of took a back seat. I think Ford kind of jumped in front of them. And here's the reality. It's Kia and Hyundai have really just brought out a whole new way to look at things. They're sleek. They have good design, great on gas mileage. So it's Hyundai really and Kia that really are just pushing and pushing. What the stores that I'm really scared about are stores that don't have Jeep. they just have Dodge and Ram. That's when it gets really scary because the Wrangler does sell. Jeep does sell. It's a car that a lot of people like. The fees to the fees. And if you want to go out, outdoors, it kind of just has that funky, cool touch to it. Once you take that out, though, that's when it gets really tough. Keith, I'm sure you could easily agree with that. But overall, I think Keith touched on a good couple points. I said the car industry is doing better. Here's why I said that, though. One, I think it's good because interest rates are going down. Even though it was a 0.25% or 0.25 points drop, the car industry looked like it fell 3 or 4%, to be honest, or at least 3% if we could agree somewhere on that. And because of that, I just don't even think people are realizing the interest rates that are going out. The manufacturers are doing some really good rebates. Ford's doing really good rebates on Lightnings. Ford's doing really good rebates on F-150s. There's actually so much going on in interest rates that right now would be the best time to trade in a vehicle. So if anyone's watching this, you want to trade in, right now is the perfect time to get into a lease. It's the best time. Dealerships want to get some of these cars off the lot that you can get put into a lease, get that negative equity, get out of it, get into a better car payment, pay and or around the same, and get out of negative equity within the next 3 years. You know what I mean? That's just where I see the car industry at. It's now time to roll, if you do have negative equity, into a lease. Or roll negative equity into a car that you can finally now get a 5%. And if you have really good credit, I even see 1.5%, 3.5% programs that are out there. So right now is the time to definitely do that. Keith, would
Keith,
you
let me
agree to that
ask you. I mean,
statement?
Jason. Yeah, I was going to say. Let me preface it with one thing that I've seen, and I'd love to hear your perspective on this, Keith, as well. We saw at the end of September, for the small amount of business that I run a BDC for, we saw a substantial lift in leads. So far this month in October, I've seen a massive drop in lead count in October so far. I'd say almost a 30 to 40% drop in lead count so far this month. Have you seen the same, Keith? And do you agree with the overall assessment that the interest rates are helping customers? Now's the time to trade. Is that the same assessment you have, Keith?
So let's do that part first. Yes, on the now's the time to trade. We're still fighting to get good quality used cars.
Yeah.
As people have slowed down their buying process, the auction's not as reliable as it used to be. You had fewer people going into leases 3 years ago than traditionally, so we don't have the same way to go to the manufacturer store and buy all these beautiful off-lease cars with low miles. So it is a great time to trade in because a lot of people are really struggling to fill the inventory up. On top of that, you have a lot of the manufacturers now. We have 0% on several models, not just hybrids and electrics. We have 0% on Ram trucks. We have 0% on Jeep Grand Cherokee gas models. You've got a lot of inventory incentives, very specific inventory incentives that they're doing out. We've got a lot of loyalty incentives out. And it's not just Stellantis that's doing that. I see that across the board. So that is, that all makes it more of a buyer's market, which is good. And now that I answered that, I forgot your second question.
The other one was about lead count. I mean, I've seen, and once again, I work a boutique scenario in a boutique part of the country with certain types of stores. Maybe it's just the demographic in which I'm working, but I've seen about a 30% decrease in lead count for those exact same stores from last month to this month so far. Have you seen a similar trend?
So this past few months has been interesting. So August to September was a pretty significant decline for us.
Yeah.
And moving through September, as we got towards the end of September, I didn't see a big jump in leads at the end of September. But here, the beginning, these first 7 days of October have been, particularly on the third-party side, has been a substantial increase from what we were seeing last month.
Okay. So
OEM side and our website, pretty flat, actually.
I got you. So third-party leads, an increase, flat from the new car leads and the OEM leads in general. Jason, what have you seen from an overall perspective? I don't know if you've analyzed this too deep so far in the first 7 days of the month.
I haven't got too far into it. I can't really give an opinion, but what I can say is that I have seen a big of a tick up in the amount of sold cars going out now. I do see more used cars being sold than new cars, but here's the deal in the market we're in. It's a used car market 100% right now. People want to get cheaper cars. It just is what it is. The team, if you agree with me or disagree, and I'd love to hear your opinions on it. To buy a car right now is $700. It's a lot of money. Sometimes the car payment is almost rivaling someone's living situation. You know what I mean? The pricing of cars has gone up so much. People want to get into used cars, so they like the $300 difference is a big deal. Buying that $80,000 car that was $50,000 or buying the $20,000 car that was $15,000. you know what? I'll just take 2 years off. I'll just buy the 2-year-old unit, the 3-year-old unit, and get it back down to that 15 bucket. Like the, Nissan Kicks and some of the Chargers that were cheap back in the day and the Challengers that were 20, 22,000. They're 30,000, they're 32,000 now. So yeah, I mean, used cars, if you want, and this for anyone watching, GMs, owners, SEMs, people out there marketing, if you want more leads, go buy used cars. Buy them from the price range of $15,000 to $22,000. Stay right in that bucket, and I promise you, you will get more leads than any of your competitors. And at any point, if you want to upgrade those people into newer cars in better situations that they came into, then you can do so by enticing them with interest rates. Hey, if you go with a used car, you're getting a higher interest rate. But hey, right now, because of lower interest rates, because of some of the zero down incentive programs, I am able to get you into a newer unit paying around the same. Do you want to pay an extra $100, $50 more to get into a new vehicle with all warranties and all packages? Of course you do. Let's just go ahead and get this wrapped up. That's what I'm seeing today. And interest rates, I would say, took a change maybe about a month ago. That's my synopsis on the situation, including more of a BDC style to it.
Keith, I would like you to disagree with anything Jason said. Do you have anything in which what he said that you would disagree with?
I would like to, but I can't.
Okay.
Last month, 75% of our sales were used cars. Normally, we're not that skewed towards used. This month so far on leads, I'm probably at about 60, 70% of the responsive leads, so what I'll call the good leads, are used cars.
Okay.
And, like you pointed out on price range, 25,000 or less is gold right now.
Gold.
We used to cut off at 100,000 miles. I'm keeping them up to 150. It's a different market.
Yeah.
So Keith, for me,
It's
I
very
think that
different.
what our audience would really benefit in this conversation is, I think our audience would benefit pretty drastically in this conversation by talking a little bit about kind of the navigation you've had over at the Riverfront store. I know that you had a previous tenure there. You have a current tenure here, and there was a level of buy-in. And I know for me and Jason, the level of buy-in from the leadership in a store is one of the most important reasons why we would decide not to work with a store or to work with a store. And I know that there's been an evolution of buy-in at the store that you're in by the leadership that you currently have. If you can, share that story of kind of where we were, what happened, and how we've gotten to where we are today. I think it would be beneficial to our audience.
Okay. So many years ago, we were the traditional internet sales manager where I took leads and then I either dealt with them or I handed them out. That evolved very slowly into a internet sales team where we had a couple of dedicated salespeople that worked all the leads. The thing I like about a BDC versus working the sales floor is I want to be busy. If you're going to keep me in a dealership for 12 hours, I don't want to be standing around at the front door waiting for a customer to walk in. I want to be busy, and that's why I like the BDC. I want to work with 400 customers in a month. I want to work with 1,000 leads in a month. I want to work the whole day that I'm there. So I feel that a BDC is a better fit for me. To talk about what you're there with the buy-in, it's 100% the main reason. If you don't have full support from not just upper level, you've got to have the principal's got to be involved with it. The GM's got to be involved with it. That all of the sales managers have to be on board with it. If it just takes one sales manager to think that they don't need a BDC to sabotage the whole program because they're not going to play by the rules, they're not going to follow the process, and then it just becomes a fight. That's difficult to work with. So when I did the move on to stores, that's really what I was always looking for. Is I would get guys to reach out to me and they'd say, "Hey, we're trying to start this up. We want to do this." And when in the interview, and probably the same way you guys look at it for consulting or running an outsourced BDC, is I want to make sure that you are truly, your heart has got to be in this. You can't be like, well, I think we want to try it. And that's what, that led me on. And I went through, I like to call it 10 years of on-the-job training before I came back. But I did small single-point stores, did multi-point stores. I did luxury stores. I did biggest one was a group called Motorworks up here in Barrington, Illinois. It was 10 stores, Mercedes, BMW, Porsche, and Honda, which they threw in for the heck of it. But it was a good mix. And with that many stores, there's a lot of experience that you get dealing with that. And that was kind of huge.
I want to go back to
Answer
something
your
you said,
question.
Keith. Yeah, no, it was great. And I want to go back to something because there's something that we've never touched on this podcast that I've seen, that I've spoken to a few people already on the podcast. You said something that is so important. If there's not a full buy-in about BDC, it crumbles. It takes one person, like you said, for it to break. I want people to really like tune into this and understand. BDC is the crucial frontline defense of the store. If the BDC doesn't work, neither does your store. The BDC is the front line of defense. It's what gets the customer welcomed. It's what calls the opportunities. It's what cultivates. It's the hunting. The dealership is the farmer. Once it gets there, they cultivate the opportunity. But our job is to really be aggressive and get it. Once one person in a dealership does not agree with the BDC, it crumbles. I have no idea why it's like that. The morality of a BDC is so important. So, Keith, from an outside perspective, okay? And I want to know what it is internally because I don't know the answer because I've worked inside a store, but it's been 5 years. So I don't really recall how to answer the question. For me, we have a morale check on a store. I believe if I don't speak to the team at a dealership, they think I forgot about them. I send over a bad opportunity once or twice. I sent you 100 leads all month, but you focused on the 2 that I messed up on. And hey, listen, here's the reality. We all mess up some way, somehow. I mess up too, so this moment, right? So you send 2 bad leads. Now it's goosh, it blows up, and now there's a big issue. We literally train my managers on morale, how to build morale within the store and camaraderie with our outside BDC and the inside store. Once one person or 2 people don't believe that this works, it does not work again. And here's the deal. It's usually a higher level person that puts one bad thing out. And it's like, because he leads above, everyone below then crumbles to it. Oh, it doesn't work. Now we're trying to find problems. And people become problem seers, not problem solvers. Now it's always the problem. It's always this. It's always been that. But the reality is, it's always been there. You're just noticing it. And instead of helping it now, you're now combating it. My question to you is, now you see the outside perspective. What is the internal perspective? Once you said that, hey, if one manager is not bought in, it doesn't work. Could you explain to the people that are watching this, the GMs, the GSMs that are out there, the BDC directors, tell them exactly what happens in that scenario within the store.
I think where you're talking about a manager, and it's not even necessarily you screwing up. Like you mentioned that if you make a mistake on how a lead is handled, that can cause a huge issue at the store. Sometimes you can do it correctly, but you do it the way manager A wants you to do it, and now manager B has to deal with the customer
Preach.
the way they wanted it done.
Preach.
And that gets even more difficult. Now you throw in a salesperson, and sometimes you're going to have that one salesperson that they believe that, the BDC never does anything right, and they're always a pain, and they always just send me junk, and this guy's not buying, he's just here to kick tires. And that can exasperate it because you're going to have, you really can't avoid it. You have cliques. You have certain salespeople that just mesh well with certain sales managers, and that happens with internal BDC just as bad as I imagine that you're explaining from what you see at your end. And it's very hard to deal with. I like to think of my job with my team, and I explain this to new hires very quickly, is I am the bubble. Nothing should be coming directly to my team without going through me, whether it's coming from a manager, a salesperson. You can ask them basic things like, can you help me with this customer? I need help getting this email out. Can you change this person over to someone's name? But if you have an issue with how something is handled or how it's being done, that should go entirely through me, because I have a thick skin. I can weather your worst attitude for the day. I don't want some 19-year-old college student who's working in my BDC part-time to have to put up with that, because they'll be in the bathroom crying.
So for me, I would tell you that from my experience, those leaders that point these things out are typically or the employees, the managers, the leaders, whoever is pointing out these flaws. Typically, it's an insecurity, in my experience, within themselves. And I think it's natural that we as people want to defend our own process and defend our own success. And for most lower performers, it's easier to point the finger at another department or another person in that department than to look at the lack of process in with yourself. And for me, the most effective general managers, the most effective managers in the store never point the finger to my outsourced BDC and say it's our fault. They always point that finger back at them and say, this is what our outsourced team does. What can we do internally to get the most out of what they do? Look, at the end of the day, guys, BDC is not rocket science. It's not the most difficult thing to do in the job. It's not an easy job, but it's not a complicated job. And the leadership, whether that's the general manager, the salesperson who points the finger that says the BDC does everything wrong, I bet you that if you looked at closely at them as they're looking at you to find things wrong, you'd be able to find far more things wrong with that individual. At least that's my experience. In your experience, have you seen that same thing inside of the store, that those people who tend to kind of point those fingers elsewhere are people who tend to be trying to point the spotlight away from them? Has that been your experience?
Yeah, I would say that's safe, and that's probably the majority of them.
Yeah.
You'll see people that maybe they're not real good with follow up, or they're the type that when they're not sitting in front of me, I'm not going to deal with them. Which is actually where the BDC is super strong. So you'd think they would be friends,
Right.
but it's almost like you mentioned it. They feel like they're being challenged in some way, or they're these guys are making me look bad, and I can't have that. The reality is, hey, I just want to sell more cars.
Yeah. Yeah. And so one of the challenges Jason and I have when we go into a store, part of our assessment is we're having to interview the company, the store, as much as they're interviewing us. Because for us, the expectation that you set up front is the expectation that we're going to deliver. And we're looking to work with every store. Now, I have a slightly different business model than Jason. Jason has a much larger operation. He has a variety of different services and offerings he does. I keep it pretty simple. I'm a boutique, personalized internet department BDC that is focused on selling appointments from internet leads. Jason does service to BDC. He does service to sales. He obviously does internet department and can kind of offer a variety of different solutions. So the fit with a store is very different. Now, for you, how do you have to structure the way you work with teams? If maybe they bring in a new manager, if they bring in a new leader, I mean, it sounds like maybe there's quite a bit of stability at your store, but as they bring in new people, how do you integrate new people into making sure they're going to fit into what you've got working and what you've built with this new BDC you built over the past recent?
Well, so yeah, the store I'm at right now is a bad example. Most of the guys have been there 20 plus years. There's a couple of us, actually quite a few of us, that had left and come back. So we all know each other. So from the management aspect, we're kind of the dream team, if you would. We get along, we communicate well, we get stuff taken care of. We don't have a lot of that back and forth bickering. They know to come to me, I know to go to them. But I have been at stores in the past where you can tell, the owner decides we're going to have a BDC, gets the general manager on board, but then the sales managers don't really want it because they feel like they could do better, whatever the case is, or they just don't like BDCs. And yeah, that tension, it's there. It's very hard to work around. And I know he kept bringing up more morale, and yeah, it destroys morale, especially in the BDC.
Yeah, I mean, that's an example of one of my major clients that I work with is the owner believed in us. The owner believes in what we do, but we didn't get full buy-in from every general manager, and they're the king of that castle. And so some of the general managers, it's been placed on them by the owner, and some of them have fully embraced it. And it's a vast difference from the team who fully embraces the process versus that general manager who never believed in it from the beginning in regards to the results that we can get out of it. Jason, I know you kind of heard my explanation and we were going to you for an answer. Has your experience been similar to the question I asked? And I don't even know if you remember the question I asked. So let's double click on that. Where's the advice from the professionals coming from? Who are the professionals? Should they seek an outside consultant? Should they work with a company like yours to supplement what they're doing in-house until they can establish it internally? Should they bring in an expert who's run a BDC in an effective bought-in store in the past? I mean, I assume all of those are options, but is there a best option? So I'll add a few things and then kick it over to you, Keith. First off, if you're seeking that, don't seek out me. Don't ask me for help. Ask Jason for help. He's much more equipped help you. I don't really want to help too many stores. It's got to take the exact right situation for me to want to help your situation. I'm glad to offer some consulting. I'm glad to offer my advice. But if you really need help with a high-powered, ready-to-go, plug-and-play machine, Jason can help you far better than I can in that regards. And I agree with your assessment. And it does, in theory, shoot us in the foot. But I think that for a store that has the ability to provide a good in-house BDC will always outperform a good outsourced BDC. But there's a caveat to that. Most in-house BDCs are not good. And you have to ask yourself, and you have to be honest, are we good? And where there is an outsourced BDC can provide a structural level of stability to enhance your weaknesses while you get yourself to good. But I think that the point that you said earlier, Keith, is so often they take that sales guy that everybody likes who's not really talented and they just throw him into the BDC. That will never be better than worldwide BDC in your store. because Jason has professionals, he has experts, he has an established recruiting process, an established training process, and he has the ability to get actionable results. And the biggest gap I see most stores run into is a limitation to being able to do their BDC correctly. Last week, we came out with our most recent episode that just came out Monday. We were dealing with a BDC director who had what you might say unlimited pockets. She could build whatever the business needed to get the results. Most stores don't look at the BDC with it being something they're willing to heavily invest in. So if you need a bunch of heads, a bunch of calls, a bunch of actionable results, you can get far more value, in my opinion, leveraging an outsourced team than you ever could as an in-source team. But if you have a good in-source team, that will always get you better results. Keith, it's a loaded statement I just made. I just talked a lot. What do you disagree with from what Jason said, from what I hear? I'm sure you got your own perspective.
Well, let's start from the beginning, because if you're looking at a BDC, the first thing you have to do is be very honest with yourself and why do you need a BDC? Because not every store needs a BDC. You may be a small store out in nowhere, Iowa, and you don't need a BDC. But if you need a BDC, why do you need a BDC? Do you need a BDC because your sales team is not following up with customers? Do you need a BDC because you have too many customers and not enough people on the sales floor? You got to be honest with yourself. And these might be some hard questions for the average owner or GM to actually answer. And that's going to help you decide whether or not you need an in-house BDC, or you need an external BDC, or you need what I saw at one store where they had kind of a hybrid. They had one guy internal, and his job was to watch everything that happened on the sales floor and watch everything that happened with the outsourced and kind of make sure it was matching what the dealership objectives were.
Yeah, the stores we work with best, Keith, have exactly that. They have an internet director, and then they have an outsourced BDC that gives us a direct person to send all the leads to do the VIPs, do the confirmations, and a person who's got ownership from the store level and oversight.
And so I think when you look at in-house, sorry, cut you off.
Go ahead, Keith.
So I think when you look at the in-house BDC, the strongest, the biggest strength that you have with an in-house BDC is going to be that you're generally there. You can get an instant response. You don't have to try to call and get a hold of the sales manager. You can walk over to his desk and knock on the door.
Agreed.
You will have a very intimate knowledge of your customer base. You're going to know exactly who comes in local. You're going to see them when you're walking through the hallway. You're going to have lunch with some of the salespeople. You're going to know that, hey, this guy's really good when the customer has this kind of questions. This gal is perfect for this type of customer. And you can provide that input to the sales management team. You can say, hey, I think this one should go to this person. And those, it's hard to put a value on that. There's some struggle if you have, like here, we have 2 physical locations. They're very close, but I'm in 2 separate buildings. I have Ram in one building. I have Chrysler, Jeep, Dodge in another building. Once you get that physical separation, technically I'm an outsourced BDC for one of those locations. So you have to keep that in mind too. If you have multiple stores, even an internal BDC, I don't think it's ever worth it to divide a BDC across multiple stores within the group unless they're really far apart. But because once you start dealing with coverage, a lot of guys in the car business don't understand what it is with hourly employees. To have employees cover your store from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., Monday through Friday, whatever your Saturday hours are, whatever your Sunday hours are, that's a lot of hours. And that's that's way tougher than a salesperson's schedule to juggle. You don't have people working 12-hour days. So you have to watch. You got a vacation. Whenever someone's on vacation, someone else is going to be sick. So you got to be planned for that. You have that huge advantage of I'm here, I know these people, I know these customers, but you do have to be careful of the other side of it.
And I'd add to the fact of knowing the community and knowing the actual physical location. I mean, so for us, when we offer a BDC, we got my people in a variety of different places throughout the country, and they've never been to Corona, California, right? They've never been. And sometimes you don't even know how to say Corona, California, right? They don't even say it correctly, and they're not from there. And not being local is something that could hinder you. You know what I mean? That would be something else to also factor in, which is the locality education that would factor into that as well. Now, let me ask you this, Keith, kind of shift gears a little bit, because I think we kind of hit that nail on the head there. Is Tell me a little bit about how your BDC is structured today. I know you've got experience in service. I know you've got experience in internet. As you said before, you've done basically everything but F&I, and you're avoiding F&I like the plague, right? I get it. What is your current structure? Is it you? Is it a team? Is it a team of specialists? Is it a team of generalists? How does that work currently in your store for the two physical buildings?
So I have two teams. I have a service BDC and I have a sales BDC. I oversee both. The sales BDC, I have one person there who's part-time sales, part-time service, and that allows me to do cool things like if a customer calls and the service call overflows, she can schedule an appointment for that customer without me having to bounce them back again. The teams are distinct. They're located in different places of the building. The sales team, they have a goal, which is I'm going to convert this customer inquiry into a visit to the store or a remote sale, whatever it turns out being. But the service team, their goal is how quickly can I get you in for the service department? It's two different sets of goals. But I actually, and the reason I didn't do this meeting from my office is my desk, I like to be right smack dab in the middle of the team.
Makes sense.
I have it set up in a big horseshoe shaped office and I'm in the middle. So I can hear every single
phone. In the
phone
middle of the sales or the service? You said there are two different locations. Or do you have a desk in both and you just bounce between?
I'm in the middle of the sales BDC.
Got it. Cool.
I don't want to insult the service people, but the service is very much so process driven.
Okay.
So it's a little easier. You have it A, B, C, D, E done. It's not like sales where you have a lot of dynamic factors in there.
Makes sense. Okay.
But so I sit right smack dab in the middle. So if they're on the phone and they have a question, they can hit mute and ask me, and I'm right there. If they're trying to send out an email, I can proofread it for them on their screen. I just turn around. So I like to be in the thick of it, if you will. I want to be there. So if I hear them struggling on the phone, I can tap them on the shoulder and say, hey, do you want me to take that call?
Makes sense. Now, do you, as in your role, I think there's different ways to do it. I've got a BDC manager who came in as a BDC rep. I have developed her to now be the head of our BDC sales team. I have a different guy who kind of helps me run the operational report manually, looking at the reports and the analytics and providing me all of the data I need to make business decisions within the BDC. But my BDC manager now has attempted to evolve herself off the phone every day. She'll still get involved when she needs to on escalated issues, but she's like, I don't want to manage a high volume of leads. Do you, Keith, think it's important for a BDC manager who's sitting in your horseshoe to have a subsegments accounts and customers they're working themselves? Or do you feel like your job is to facilitate and to keep everybody in the right place?
So me personally, I love working with customers. I don't want to take leads, but I think you have to consider what you're doing as a pay plan. If your BDC manager is being paid based on the performance of a team as a whole, they should not really be taking leads. If your BDC manager gets paid as a BDC rep with extra pay for being the manager, then you got to be careful and make sure they're not cherry picking all the good leads for themselves. So for me, my personal preference and my recommendation, if you're looking at setting up a BDC, would be you have a manager that is not a rep. Whether they were a rep before, whatever, they're not a rep anymore. So their job should be to multiply the effectiveness of each of your reps, whether it's I'm going to take this call because this customer is difficult, or I'm going to help you with this because you've got 3 other customers to get back to. So I'm going to get these lease quotes for you.
Makes total sense.
Whatever you're doing, that's how you divide that up. I would say the manager's position should be manage the department, manage some of the difficult customers, help every member of the team, but you're not there to be a rep and take fresh leads, and you need to be available when you're needed.
Yeah, it's tough for me as the owner, right? It's tough for me as the guy who writes a check to know the reason my BDC manager got to the position she got to is because she was the best on the phone. And to not have my best on the phone is always a challenging part. But I agree with you, and I think the assessment is right on target, which is you always want to make sure that your leaders and your team, whether that's the head of the BDC department or your BDC, that their comp aligns with the expectations. Because if you pay people just on setting appointments, then they don't care if they show up. If you pay them on shows, then they don't care if they buy. If you pay them on a combination of those, and there could be this, but they might not focus on the thing that's most inside of their control, which is setting appointments. If you pay them on how many calls they make, then they might get in an action of making too many calls to check the call box and not necessarily worried about how many appointments they get. So like the alignment of focus changes for us and how we work and our model. We get paid for just managing leads. We actually don't get paid anymore as a company, as an outsourced BDC, if we get a 45% set rate or a 55% set rate, or if our client has a 12% lead to buy rate, or they have a 20% lead to buy rate, we don't get paid any differently. But we obviously are able to maintain a longer success with the client the better we do. And the better we do also creates the ability for us to potentially be interested in taking on more boutique clients based off of ability. And that's the challenge we have with my team. Is the manager is trying to get the team to check all the boxes without incentive being aligned with being able to get the proper results, but also knowing that, man, I've got a day yesterday where leads were down, appointments were down, we were not performing, and I'm like having to call the manager, you need to get on the phone because you can get us appointments better than anybody else. And that kind of fluidity of, let's look at the problem, let's go solve the problem. Let me ask you this. So Keith, if there's a thing that you could do that you're not doing with your business right now, with your BDC, a level of staff, a level of process, a thing that you don't have the ability to do, whether it's bandwidth, whether it's budget, whether it's that level of the team, whether it's ability, where is your biggest gap in your business right now?
So me personally, what I struggle with the most is being able to retain high quality employees. I think everyone still views that it's a call center job and they view it as entry level. And if they come in and they're not having good months and good pay repeatedly, it's entry level pay. And being able to take, I get a lot of college students, they're going to school. So trying to get someone that grew up working fast food or standard retail and get them to understand that you have a performance-based pay. I don't care if you've been here a week. There's nothing keeping you from making more money than that guy who's been here 2 years. You just have to work harder, do better, do everything that you can to get those customers in to convert. And a lot of people everyone has that limit where they go up to and they say, okay, I need to make this much to be comfortable. And once they get there, they're kind of done. They check out. It doesn't matter if it's halfway through the month or the last day of the month. And to try to keep them motivated beyond that is very difficult. And, I wish we could go back in time a little bit to where I was able to throw out spiffs and contests. And here it's Saturday. If you get me 5 appointments today, I'll give you an extra $50, little things like that were great incentives. But, margins are tight nowadays. So I don't have the ability to do the same thing there. I don't have the ability to go out and really cherry pick the employees that I would want as much as I can. And the car business has always had a little bit of a stigma. So most people don't necessarily want to work in a dealership.
One thing that's worked really well for me, Keith, just to give you one last thing as we kind of come to the end here. One thing that's worked for me is in all the businesses I've built and all the businesses I've run, and just to give you a background of me, I've only been a year in the BDC world, but I've been in about 15 years in the automotive space. And most of what I've done is built sales organizations on the vendor side. And the thing that really kind of changed my whole trajectory as a sales leader is when I started hiring everybody in every single organization I built and ran as an entry-level employee. I never hired any person above an entry-level employee. And I would go after the same type of people you were talking about, just out of high school, just out of college, people that have never actually done the type of job that I'm doing, but that are early enough in their career and that are hungry to become something within their career to do that. And where I would tell you some of the BDC stores that we worked at, they use BDC as the springboard for every other role inside of the dealership. And if you've got an ownership of the dealership, if you got a buy-in from the ownership of saying that everybody hired starts in the BDC, everybody. And then you have to spend at least 3 to 6 months in the BDC before you're ever given an opportunity to go to the floor and sell cars. But the BDC is the foundational proving ground to the future inside of that. And if you look at that as the springboard in the future, that will have you having to do a lot more work on training and development, but you'll have a lot more talented people willing to take the job for less pay because they have the forecasted opportunity to grow within the business. And what ends up happening 6 months, 12 months from now, you have so many people who have earned the seat they're sitting in, and the buy-in in the dealership is remarkable. Now, you guys have a slightly different dealership with people that have been there for 15 to 20 years, and there's not a lot of turnover. I don't know if that creates that same opportunity, but the better your BDC is, the more you'll do with the leads, with the more cars you'll sell, and the more opportunities that'll come in the various other places. That would be my advice, and something I've done and implemented that has been great at getting me low-level talent to be able to get the most out of that talent while they're in the role.
That sounds like a good idea. They're worth a shot at least.
Worth a shot. And so if you need my help as a friend, obviously just let me know. I'll be glad to offer you any advice and help on that. So Keith, we're coming to the end of our time that we dedicate for this time. It looks like we lost Jason somewhere along the way. So it's down to me and you. So any final words you would like to say to any of our guests that would love to, kind of hear from your 20 plus years of experience of doing this at a high level?
I think, the biggest thing I could tell you is two things. Don't be afraid to try new stuff, and trust in some of your employees. I've had some of my greatest employees are people that, you didn't expect. They came in by accident and applied for the job. And we take them, and now they've moved on and they're working with significant companies. I have one young lady working at Reynolds and Reynolds now.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing. She was a perfect example. She actually, when I started, I always try to teach every employee of mine how to do my job, because I want to be able to take vacation, really is all it boils down to. And she took that. She did a great job. She filled in as the BDC manager while I was back in service. And that experience is invaluable. So, you're going to have employees like that. And if you'd ask the traditional car dealership, do you trust somebody who's a 19-year-old girl that's going to college, that does not look the part of a car salesperson, does not have any experience in the industry, to do what she's done? And most guys would say no. But by having that trust and putting her in there, what we got as a result for the 5 years that we had her was absolutely amazing and worth every minute of it. So take that chance is what I would say.
I love that. And to piggyback on that statement is that 90% of the people who sit on the other end of this interview seat for this podcast, when I ask them, how did you get into the automotive industry? How did your story start? 90+% said I accidentally got into the automotive industry. It was an accident. I thought it was going to be a summer gig. I had all these other plans in my career, but once I got in, I never left it. Now I'm a general manager of 5 stores, and I do this and I run this and I do that. Almost everybody we talk to, that's their story. So to your point, you never know who that person's going to be. And you never know, if you just find yourself in a situation, make the best of every situation you have. And that could be your future as well. Keith, I appreciate you giving the time. I know Jason appreciates it as well. Sorry we lost him along the way, but either way, Keith, if there's anything we can do to help you out as you continue to build what you're building there, don't hesitate to ask. And for all that want to maybe get in touch with Keith, get to know Keith, follow Keith, I will make sure we have all of his social and information involved in there. Any last words, Keith?
No, thanks for having me. It's been great. Wasn't quite sure what to expect, so
yeah,
it's a good time. Now I have a bunch of old podcasts to go watch.
There you go. Well, I look forward to now having a new follower, and now a bunch of people now have a new person they can follow as well. So Keith, I appreciate you giving the time. We'll talk soon, buddy.
You bet. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you. Bye.